Anaya lived in a grand house with marble floors, tall glass windows, and shining furniture that reflected the light like a mirror. Her parents were known for their business and their busy lives. They often traveled for meetings, leaving Anaya with the maids, drivers, and gardeners. She had everything a girl could dream of: designer clothes, expensive shoes, and her favorite item of all, a golden belt that matched almost every outfit she wore. That belt was not just an accessory to her, it was a symbol of her style, her wealth, and her pride. Anaya was used to everyone following her orders. The staff in the house rarely said no to her, not because she was kind, but because they feared her sharp words. She was young, but her attitude was louder than her age. Many times, she would scold the maids for little mistakes: spilled water, a cushion placed incorrectly, or a plate not polished enough. Most of them kept quiet and continued working, hoping the day would pass without upsetting her. One afternoon, when the sun was bright and the air was warm, a new maid arrived. Her name was Mira. She was simple, with a calm face and soft eyes that did not show fear or anger. Mira wore plain clothes, tied her hair back neatly, and greeted everyone with a polite smile. She had joined the house because she needed work urgently, and this big mansion was offering a good pay. At first, Anaya did not notice her much. She was busy with her phone, sending messages to her friends and trying on new outfits in her large room. But soon, Mira was given the task to clean Anaya's room. It was full of perfumes, makeup items, and shining accessories placed on a wide table. Anaya was sitting on her bed, scrolling through her social media, when she suddenly heard a faint sound of something falling. Her eyes moved to the table, and her heart skipped. Her golden belt, the one she loved the most, had slipped slightly from its place as Mira dusted the corner near it. Mira quickly picked it up carefully and placed it back exactly where it was. She whispered a soft apology, "I am sorry, madam. It slipped a little." Anaya's face turned red with irritation. "Do you even know how expensive this is?" she snapped. "You people don't have the habit of handling such things." Mira stayed silent. Her hands folded in front of her, eyes lowered. She did not want to create trouble on her first week of work. The other maids, who were passing by the door, paused for a moment, sensing the tension in the air. Anaya's friends had just sent her a message, asking her to join their group call. But her pride was now awake, and she did not want to leave this moment without making her point clear. She stood up, took the belt in her hands, and looked at Mira with a sharp smile. "You think you are strong enough to touch my things without care? Maybe you should learn a lesson," she said, half laughing, half mocking. "What if we have a little challenge? A fight? Let's see if you can even stand in front of me." The room fell silent. The words sounded strange even to the other staff members who heard them. They looked at each other from the corridor, whispering quietly. A fight? Between the rich girl and the new maid? Surely, this was just Anaya trying to show her power. Nobody expected Mira to agree. But then something unexpected happened. Mira raised her head slowly. Her calm eyes met Anaya's proud ones. There was no anger, no fear, just a steady silence. "If that is what you want," she said softly, "then I will not say no." Anaya blinked, taken aback. "You agree?" she asked, almost laughing. "Fine then. Tomorrow afternoon. The garden. Don't back out." She tossed the belt back on the table and waved her hand as if dismissing the matter. But inside, she felt a strange thrill. This would be fun. Her friends would laugh about it. She imagined telling them how she defeated a maid who dared to touch her things. The thought made her grin. Mira, on the other hand, quietly continued cleaning. Her face did not show any excitement or fear. She picked up the duster and moved to the next shelf, while the whispers in the house grew louder. The driver told the cook told the laundry woman, and by evening, the whole staff knew that a strange challenge had been set. Later that night, Anaya sat by her mirror, brushing her hair and smiling at her reflection. "It will be easy," she murmured to herself. "She looks weak. She will probably run away before it even starts." In another corner of the house, Mira sat on her small bed in the servants' quarters. She took out an old photograph from her bag. It showed her younger self standing beside a tall man with a medal around his neck. She touched the photo gently and whispered, "I did not come here to fight, Papa. But sometimes, life puts you in strange places." The moonlight fell softly on her face as she lay down to rest. Outside, the mansion was silent, but inside its walls, a storm of pride and secrets was slowly building. The next morning arrived with a warm breeze flowing through the mansion's garden. The news of the challenge had already spread among the workers. Every whisper in the kitchen, every quiet talk near the laundry room carried the same question: would Mira really fight Anaya? Anaya woke up earlier than usual. She stood in front of her mirror, trying on her sports shoes and a fitted jacket that matched her favorite golden belt. She imagined herself as the winner already. "This will teach her where she belongs," she said softly while fixing her hair into a neat ponytail. Her reflection in the mirror smiled back with confidence. As she walked downstairs, she found two of her close friends on a video call. They were both laughing as she told them about the challenge. "A maid. Are you serious, Anaya? This will be over in seconds," one of them giggled. "She must be so scared right now," the other added. Anaya nodded proudly, "Of course, she is. I mean, look at her. She is just simple." Her words echoed in the hall, but a gardener nearby overheard them and shook his head slightly. The staff had seen something in Mira's eyes yesterday. There was no fear, only a strange calmness. Mira, on the other hand, was quietly doing her morning chores. She swept the long hallway, watered the potted plants, and helped in the kitchen. Her movements were steady and her face, as always, carried no sign of worry. Inside her heart, though, she thought about the coming afternoon. She had faced tougher moments in life than this, but the thought of being in the middle of everyone's eyes still made her heart beat a little faster. "Mira, are you really going to fight her?" whispered the cook, an older woman who had been in the mansion for many years. Mira looked at her and smiled faintly. "It's not about fighting," she said gently. "Sometimes people need to see something before they learn." The cook didn't fully understand but nodded anyway. She patted Mira's shoulder and returned to her pots. As the hours passed, the mansion seemed different. The workers moved faster, glancing at the clock often. Even the driver, who usually sat outside reading the newspaper, stayed near the garden with a curious face. Anaya, meanwhile, prepared like it was a special event. She selected the perfect shoes, tied her belt tightly, and sent another message to her friends. "It will happen at 4. Don't miss the live video." By mid-afternoon, the garden was ready. The lawn was wide, with trimmed grass and a soft breeze moving the leaves of the tall trees around it. A few birds hopped near the fountain, unaware of the human tension filling the air. Mira stepped out quietly, wearing a simple cotton kurta and flat sandals. Her hair was tied in a low braid, and her hands were free of any ornaments. She did not speak to anyone as she walked to the open space. Her steps were light, but her eyes were sharp, observing the ground, the people, the air itself. Anaya arrived shortly after, walking with her head held high. She waved her phone in the air to show her friends that she was ready. "Don't blink, or you'll miss her defeat," she laughed. The workers stood a little distance away, forming a half circle. None of them dared to speak loudly. The air was thick with waiting. Anaya stretched her arms and said, "So, are you ready? I hope you don't run away now." Mira simply nodded. "I am ready," she said softly. For a moment, they stood facing each other. Anaya's eyes sparkled with overconfidence, while Mira's expression was steady and calm, like a quiet river that hides its depth. Anaya began to boast, "You know, this belt has seen many moments of victory. Today will be another one." She held it proudly as if it were a symbol of power. Mira tilted her head slightly. "Victory is not always in showing power," she replied. Her voice was low, but it reached everyone's ears. The staff looked at one another. They could feel something unusual about this girl. She was not just standing there out of fear or pressure, she was standing there because she had decided to. Minutes passed as they decided the simple rules: no harm, no dangerous moves, just a test of strength and balance. Anaya smirked, "Fine. Let's start soon. I don't have the whole day." But inside, for the first time, a small drop of doubt touched her pride. Why did Mira not look nervous? Why did she not tremble or try to escape? In the corner of the garden, Mira's fingers brushed against her wrist as if remembering a time when she had worn something else: a band, a medal, something of meaning. Her mind traveled back to a dusty ground where a crowd had once cheered her name, but she shook the memory away. This was not the time to think of the past. The clock struck 4. The staff waited in silence. The leaves rustled in the breeze. Anaya stepped forward, her belt shining under the sun, and said, "Let's begin." Mira took a deep breath and whispered under it, "For respect, not for pride." And with that, the moment everyone had been waiting for was about to start. The garden was quiet except for the sound of leaves moving gently in the warm wind. The fountain in the middle gave a soft splash now and then, but even that sound seemed to pause when Anaya and Mira faced each other. The staff had gathered around at a safe distance. Nobody spoke loudly, everyone's eyes were fixed on the two girls standing in the center of the green lawn. Anaya stood tall, her golden belt shining like a crown of pride around her waist. She rolled her shoulders and made a few quick moves, as if warming up. Her face carried the same confidence as always, the same belief that her words were enough to make people step back. Mira, on the other hand, looked like the breeze itself: calm, soft, but quietly present. She wore a plain cotton outfit and had tied her braid tightly so it would not disturb her. Her eyes were steady, her hands loose at her sides. No one could guess what was going on in her mind. "Don't say later that I didn't warn you," Anaya said with a half smile, adjusting her belt once again. Mira gave a small nod. "I will not say that," she replied softly. The cook, standing near the fountain, whispered to the driver, "She is too calm. I don't understand her. It's like she already knows something." The driver, an old man with wise eyes, said, "Sometimes the quiet ones have the loudest strength." The clock struck 4:15. Anaya clapped her hands once. "All right. Let's make this quick." The rules were simple: no harmful actions, just a show of skill and balance. Anaya stepped forward first. She raised her hands, ready to push or block, expecting Mira to stay still or step back. But what happened next surprised everyone. Mira moved not fast, but with a smooth step to the side, making Anaya's first push meet only the air. Anaya turned quickly, trying again, but Mira shifted her weight like a leaf changing direction with the wind. The staff gasped quietly. It was not a fight yet, but already something was clear: Mira was not weak. Anaya frowned. "You're just lucky," she said and tried a second move, this time with more force. Mira raised her hand gently, stopped the push with her palm, and stepped back without losing balance. It was not loud, not harsh, but it was clear control. Anaya's friends, who were watching through her phone placed on a chair nearby, started sending laughing emojis, telling her to finish it. Their voices echoed in her mind, and pride burned in her chest. She rushed forward, trying to catch Mira off guard, but once again, Mira turned at the right moment. Anaya's shoe slid slightly on the grass, and she had to hold her balance. The workers' whispers grew louder now. "Did you see that?" said the gardener. She didn't even push her, but Anaya couldn't hold the ground. For the first time, Anaya felt a small pinch of unease. This was supposed to be simple. Why did Mira not break a sweat? Why was she so steady? "Stand properly," Anaya said loudly, trying to sound in control. Mira looked at her quietly. "I am standing properly," she said, her voice even and low. Then Anaya tried again, this time with a sudden move, aiming to grab Mira's arm. But before her fingers could close around it, Mira shifted her body, turned her wrist, and lightly touched Anaya's shoulder. It was such a soft move that it looked like a tap, but it made Anaya lose her balance and stumble 2 steps back. The staff gasped louder this time. The cook covered her mouth, the gardener's eyes widened, and even the driver nodded slightly as if he had expected something like this. Anaya straightened herself quickly. "How did you do that?" she asked, her voice sharper now. Mira did not answer. She only stood where she was, her hands still loose, her eyes still calm. Minutes passed. The breeze grew cooler as the sun started to lower behind the tall trees. Anaya felt sweat forming near her hairline. She had tried 3 times. None of them worked. Her pride was still standing, but its legs were shaking. "You think you're better than me?" Anaya snapped, trying to hide her doubt. Mira shook her head. "No, I do not think that. I only know how to stand." It was a simple sentence, but it struck Anaya like a stone on still water. She stepped forward again, this time slower, trying to plan instead of rushing. But once more, Mira's movements were like a rhythm she could not catch. The fight was not loud, not rough, but every failed move of Anaya made the quiet crowd realize something: this maid was not ordinary. Finally, Mira made a single move. As Anaya tried to grab her belt, Mira turned, held her wrist gently, and guided her down not harshly, but firmly until Anaya's knees touched the grass. She did not fall hard. There was no pain, only surprise. The garden became silent. Even the birds seemed to stop their chirping. Mira stepped back, gave a small bow of respect, and said, "I do not wish to hurt you. This is enough." Anaya stayed on her knees, breathing fast, her mind struggling to understand what had just happened. For the first time in her life, she was not the one holding power. The garden was still silent when Anaya slowly stood up from the grass. Her golden belt, which had always made her feel powerful, now felt like an ordinary piece of cloth around her waist. The workers looked at her, then at Mira, who was standing calmly, her hands folded in front of her. Anaya's heart beat fast, not from pain, but from the strange feeling of defeat. She had never been in such a situation before. She was the girl everyone listened to, the one who decided what should happen in this house. But today, in front of all eyes, she had lost without a single hard push or shout. "Who taught you that?" Anaya asked, her voice not as loud as before. Mira gave a soft smile. "It is not about being taught for one day. It is about practice, patience, and knowing when not to fight." The staff whispered among themselves. The cook nodded slowly, the gardener folded his arms, and the driver rubbed his chin thoughtfully. It was clear that Mira had some skill that no one had known about. Anaya tried to cover her embarrassment with a laugh. "You are just lucky. I wasn't serious. If I wanted, I could have won." But even as she said those words, they felt empty. Deep inside, something had shifted. Pride was still there, but it was now mixed with a curious respect. Mira looked at her with gentle eyes. It was never about winning or losing. It was about understanding. The words stayed in Anaya's mind like a quiet echo. She turned her face away and walked towards the fountain, trying to hide the heat rising to her cheeks. The phone that had been recording the whole scene buzzed with messages from her friends. They were asking what had gone wrong, why she was not able to win easily. Anaya turned it off without replying. The workers started to return to their duties, still whispering about what they had seen. The sun was slowly setting, turning the sky orange and pink. Mira picked up the fallen leaves near the garden's edge and quietly started clearing the place, as if nothing had happened. Her steps were steady, her breathing normal. Anaya turned back and watched her for a moment. She wanted to say something sharp again, to regain her pride, but the words did not come out. Instead, she found herself walking towards Mira. "Where did you learn to move like that?" Anaya asked, this time without anger. Mira stopped her work and looked at her. Her eyes were soft but deep, like a story hidden behind a closed door. "A long time ago," she said. "My father taught me. He believed in strength that does not harm, only protects." Anaya frowned slightly. "Your father? Was he a teacher or something?" Mira nodded. "He was a coach. He trained children in martial arts. He always said strength is not about showing power. It is about knowing how to stand when the world tries to push you down." For a moment, silence hung between them. Anaya did not know what to say. The girl she had called a maid had a past far different from what she had imagined. "Then why are you working here?" The question slipped out before Anaya could stop it. Mira's lips curved into a faint smile, not of sadness, but of acceptance. "Life changes. After my father passed away, I had to look after my younger brother and sister. I needed work. So, I came here." Anaya felt a strange weight in her chest. She had always thought of her life as normal rich parents, big house, expensive things. She never wondered what struggles the people working in her home might have faced before arriving here. The golden belt around her waist felt heavier now. Mira continued, "I did not agree to this challenge because I wanted to defeat you. I agreed because I saw anger in your eyes yesterday. Sometimes, a lesson can be learned without shouting." Anaya lowered her eyes. Her mind was no longer thinking of victory or loss. It was trying to understand something she had never thought about: respect. The sky had turned deeper now. The lights of the mansion glowed softly, and the garden looked calm once again. The staff had gone back inside, leaving only the two of them in the open space. I didn't know," Anaya whispered after a long pause. Mira looked at her and gave a small nod. "Now you do. It is never too late to learn." There was no anger in her voice, no pride in her win. It was as if nothing big had happened, but for Anaya, the moment was larger than any victory she had imagined. She turned and walked back into the house, her footsteps slower than usual. Each step carried a question: what does it really mean to be strong? Mira stayed behind, picking up the last few leaves, the soft breeze brushing her face. She looked up at the sky and whispered, "Thank you, Papa. Today, your lesson reached another heart." The night wrapped the mansion in quietness. But inside, two hearts were no longer the same. One had learned humility, and the other had quietly planted a seed of change. The following morning felt different in the grand mansion. The usual laughter in Anaya's room was missing. Her friends kept calling her, but she ignored the calls. She sat by her wide window, staring at the golden belt lying on her table. It used to shine like her pride, but now it felt like just a piece of metal. Downstairs, the staff moved quietly. The story of what had happened in the garden had spread like the wind. Some spoke about it in whispers, others only exchanged glances. Mira, however, was working the same way she always did: steady hands, soft steps, polite words. Anaya watched her from the top of the stairs for a while. She noticed how Mira carried heavy laundry baskets without complaint, how she smiled gently when the gardener offered her tea, how her calmness seemed to fill the air. There was no sign of pride in her, no sign of trying to show off her skill from yesterday. Something inside Anaya began to stir. She remembered her own words, You people don't know how to handle things. Now, those words sounded harsh even to her own ears. By noon, Anaya finally gathered courage and walked toward Mira, who was arranging fresh flowers in a vase near the hall. Mira, she called softly. Mira turned, surprised to see her standing there without the usual frown or loud voice. Yes, madam, she asked politely. Stop calling me that, Anaya said quickly, then paused. Can we talk? Mira nodded, placing the flowers carefully on the table. They sat near the wide glass window where the sunlight came in like a golden sheet. Why did you never tell anyone about yourself? Anaya began. About your skill, about your past. Mira looked down at her hands. Because it does not change the work I do here. I came to earn, to support my family. Telling my story would not wash the dishes or sweep the floor. Anaya tilted her head. But you are not just a maid. You were, someone strong, someone skilled. Mira smiled gently. Everyone is someone before life changes them. Anaya stayed silent for a moment. She wanted to know more. Your father, you said he taught you. Mira nodded. Her voice softened as she began to speak. Yes. My father was a martial arts coach. We lived in a small town. He trained children for tournaments. I was his first student. We practiced every morning, every evening. I learned how to move, how to stand, how to balance. It was more than sport, it was our way of life. Her eyes turned distant as memories filled them. Then one winter, he fell ill. The medicines were costly. I left my school to work in a shop to buy them, but it was too late. He passed away. After that, I had only my younger brother and sister. They were small, they needed food, books, clothes. So I came to the city. A friend of my father's helped me find work here. Anaya listened, her fingers tight around the edge of her dress. She had never imagined the quiet girl carrying trays in her house had such a story behind her. I promised my father one thing, Mira continued. I would never use what he taught me to hurt someone. Only to protect, only to remind. Anaya's eyes met hers. You agreed to the challenge, was it to remind me? Mira gave a small nod. Yes. I saw how you looked at people. How your words sometimes cut deeper than a wound. I did not want to defeat you. I wanted you to pause. Sometimes, when people stop for a moment, they begin to see. Anaya felt her throat tighten. No one had ever spoken to her this way, not with anger, but with truth wrapped in kindness. She whispered, I am sorry. Mira looked at her with calm eyes. Sorry is not heavy. Change is heavier. But even a small change is a start. The words stayed in Anaya's heart like a seed buried in soft soil. For the first time, she wanted to do something more than just say sorry. That evening, Anaya sat in her room with her golden belt beside her. She thought of all the times she had used her things to feel important, to feel above others. She thought of Mira lifting heavy baskets without complaint while she herself had shouted over a small touch. She picked up her phone, but not to call her friends. Instead, she opened a search page and typed, how to sponsor education for house staff. It was a small step, but it was a step forward. Outside, Mira finished her work for the day and looked at the fading light. She whispered to herself, maybe today, Papa, someone understood what you always wanted to teach. The mansion slowly grew quiet as night approached, but something had shifted in its walls. A pride was bending, and a respect was rising. The next few days passed quietly, but they did not feel the same anymore. Anaya, who once filled the house with her sharp voice and proud steps, now moved with slower thoughts and softer eyes. She still wore her favorite clothes, still tied her golden belt when she dressed up, but it no longer felt like a crown. It was just a belt now, a piece of cloth with a shine that could not hide the lessons she had learned. Mira continued her daily routine as usual. She woke up early, cleaned the rooms, watered the garden, and helped the cook. Her calmness remained, but there was now a slight warmth in her eyes whenever Anaya crossed her path. It was not friendship yet, but it was no longer just distance. One afternoon, as the sky turned light blue and the breeze moved softly through the hallways, Anaya approached Mira again. This time she was not holding her phone or any accessory. Her hands were empty, and her voice was careful. "Mira, do you have a few minutes?" she asked. Mira looked up from the table where she was folding clean sheets. "Yes, I do," she said kindly. They sat near the window where sunlight touched the floor like soft gold. For a moment, neither spoke. Anaya's fingers played with the edge of her sleeve. "I have been thinking," Anaya began slowly, "about what you said, that sorry is not heavy, but change is heavier." Mira listened silently, her eyes calm. "I don't know how to change," Anaya admitted, her voice low. "I have lived like this for so long, ordering people, getting angry, thinking things are only about me. But when you told me about your father, about your life, it made me feel small." Mira shook her head gently. "Feeling small is not the lesson. Seeing others is the lesson. You do not need to lose what you have. You only need to share a part of it." Anaya thought about that. She had so many things: clothes she never wore, shoes still in boxes, a room bigger than some families' entire homes. She had always believed those things made her important. But now she wondered if importance was not in things, but in how those things were used. That evening, she called her parents. They were traveling as usual, busy with their business, but they listened when she spoke. "Can we help Mira with her studies?" Anaya asked. "She works so hard, but she has a skill. She could be more than just a maid here." Her parents were surprised by her request. "Anaya, where is this coming from?" her mother asked. "From a mistake I made," Anaya answered honestly. "And from something I finally understood." After a long pause, her father spoke, "If you believe it is right, we will support it. Arrange everything, and we will provide the fees." When Anaya ended the call, a small relief touched her heart. It was the first real step she had taken, not for herself, but for someone else. The next morning, she found Mira near the garden, trimming the plants. The grass smelled fresh, and the sun was gentle on their faces. "I spoke to my parents," Anaya said softly. "They will support your education if you want to continue it. You can also train again, if you choose to." Mira paused, the small scissors in her hand stopping mid-air. Her eyes widened slightly, and for the first time since she had come to this house, her face showed surprise instead of calmness. "Why would you do that for me?" she asked. Anaya smiled faintly. "Because you reminded me that strength is not about looking down on people. It is about lifting them up. I want to try." Mira's lips curved into a gentle smile, a real one that reached her eyes. "Thank you," she said. "I never asked for this, but I am grateful." The gardener, who was standing a little distance away, watched them with quiet joy. The mansion, once filled with only orders and noise, now carried a softer sound, the sound of change. Over the next few days, Anaya started doing more than just making promises. She helped Mira fill out forms for evening classes. She cleared a small space in the storeroom where Mira could practice her old moves again. Sometimes, when the sun was setting, Anaya would sit on the steps and watch her practice. Her movements were graceful yet strong, like poetry written in air. One evening, as Mira finished her practice, Anaya said, "You know, I used to think my belt made me special. But now, when I see you move without anything fancy, I feel like strength is something else entirely." Mira laughed softly. "Belts can hold clothes. Respect holds people together. Both can stay, but only one can change hearts." Anaya nodded slowly, her mind remembering every proud word she had spoken in the past. Now those words felt far away, like echoes from another time. The mansion was still big, her parents were still busy, but something had started to bloom inside those walls: an understanding, a bond forming quietly between two people who were once divided by pride and silence. The morning sun poured softly through the tall windows of the mansion. Anaya stood by her balcony, looking down at the garden where Mira was arranging flowers and sweeping the pathways. For the first time, Anaya did not feel bored or impatient. Instead, she felt calm, almost happy to watch Mira at work. It was a strange feeling, one she had never experienced before: respect mixed with admiration. Over the past week, things had changed. Anaya had helped Mira fill out forms for evening classes, found books for her, and even cleared a small area in the storeroom for Mira to practice martial arts. She had started noticing the small things: Mira's careful steps, her kind gestures, the way she treated everyone equally without judging. Anaya realized that being rich and having beautiful things did not mean much if one's heart was not kind. One afternoon, as the sun began to dip behind the trees, Anaya called Mira over. "Come here," she said softly. Mira walked over with a calm smile. "Yes, Anaya." Anaya hesitated for a moment, then handed her a small notebook. "These are for you. I talked to my parents, they agreed to support your classes and training. You can learn everything you want, and they will help you with the fees." Mira's eyes widened slightly. She held the notebook gently as if it were a treasure. "Anaya, I don't know what to say," she murmured. "I never expected this." Anaya smiled faintly. "You don't have to say anything. Just promise me that you will follow your dreams. That's all I want." Mira's smile widened, and a small tear appeared in her eye. "I promise," she whispered. The air seemed lighter that day. The mansion, which had been filled with strict rules and silence, now felt warm. The staff moved around with quiet joy, noticing the change in Anaya. She no longer shouted or demanded. She greeted the maids, the cook, and even the gardener with polite words. She had begun to understand what true strength and respect meant. Days turned into weeks. Mira attended her classes in the evenings, returning home with stories of what she had learned and new techniques she was practicing. Anaya would often sit by the storeroom, watching her train. It was like watching poetry in motion. The way Mira moved with balance, speed, and grace amazed Anaya every time. One evening, Mira had finished her practice, and Anaya approached her. "You know," she said quietly, "I used to think winning was everything. I thought having money, things, or power made someone strong. But now I see, it's not about those things. Strength is kindness, patience, and knowing how to help others." Mira nodded, her eyes soft. "Yes. And sometimes, it takes a long time for people to realize it." Anaya smiled, feeling a warmth in her chest she had never felt before. "Thank you, for teaching me, Mira. Not in words, but by being yourself." Mira laughed softly. "And thank you for seeing it, Anaya. That matters too." As days passed, the bond between the two girls grew stronger. Anaya began including Mira in small decisions, asking her opinion about things in the house. They laughed together over small mistakes, shared tea in the garden during breaks, and even exchanged stories about their childhoods. Anaya's arrogance had melted away, replaced by humility and genuine care for others. One afternoon, Mira received news that she had been accepted into a local martial arts competition. She hesitated for a moment, thinking of the long journey and the challenges ahead. Anaya, seeing the worry on her face, said, "You will do great, Mira. I will be there cheering for you." The day of the competition arrived, and Anaya's parents, though busy, took time to attend. The hall was filled with participants, spectators, and judges, but Anaya focused only on Mira. She had a small handmade sign that read, "Go Mira." You can do it. Mira stepped onto the mat with confidence. Her movements were precise, strong, and graceful. Every kick, every step, every block showed the skill she had honed over the years. The judges nodded in approval, and the crowd began to cheer. Anaya clapped loudly, her heart swelling with pride. That's her. That's Mira, she shouted. After a long series of performances, the results were announced. Mira had won first place. She smiled widely, tears of joy in her eyes, as she held the medal. She looked for Anaya in the crowd and ran toward her, hugging her tightly. I couldn't have done this without you believing in me, Mira whispered. Anaya laughed, her eyes bright. No, Mira. You did this all by yourself. I just learned from watching you. From that day on, the mansion felt warmer. The staff noticed the change not only in Anaya but in the way she treated everyone around her. The golden belt that once symbolized pride now sat lightly around her waist, a reminder that real strength came from respect, kindness, and the courage to learn. Mira continued her training and studies, excelling in both. Anaya supported her in every way she could. The two became close friends, a bond that bridged worlds, one of wealth and one of humble beginnings, showing that respect, understanding, and care could connect hearts stronger than anything else. The story of the rich girl and the maid spread quietly, not as gossip, but as an example of change, humility, and friendship. The mansion no longer echoed with arrogance, but with laughter, learning, and warmth. And every time Anaya looked at her golden belt, she remembered the day she learned the most important lesson of her life: true strength is measured not by wealth, skill, or pride, but by the love and respect we show to others. The sun set behind the mansion, painting the sky with soft orange and pink. Inside, two friends sat in the garden, smiling, sharing stories, and dreaming of brighter days. And for the first time, both of them knew that together, they could face anything.